and welcome to Art Alive. Today we'll be talking to Alison Kinnaird, one of the world's prominent glass engravers, whose work is being featured in an exhibition here at the Bluecoat Display Centre. Before that, we'll have a look at Jazamin Sinclair's solo exhibition, Errance. I met her last week at the Egg Cafe, where her work is on display. So, Jessamine, we're here for your solo exhibition at the Egg Cafe. Can you tell us how you put it together, which work you selected for this exhibition? What is it about?
Well, I tried to basically show a little bit of everything that I do. So I wanted to include some painting, some drawing, some illustration and some photography. So that was how I selected it. I wanted to use newer stuff, so I made some new stuff for the show. I also included some of my older stuff, but I didn't include everything because the sort of thing I would usually do would be go out and include everything and try and fill the whole. I mean, it's quite full anyway, but.
Yeah. And can you tell us maybe how you started doing art in the first place?
Well, I've kind of always been around art and music and stuff all my life. My mum's an artist. My dad, who I didn't really know, he's an artist as well. But my auntie was into graphic design and stuff like that. So between all of that, I've been around it all the time. My mum went to art college when I was little. I was doing it all through school, and then I chose to continue with it and go to university and do a degree in fine art, and I finished that in 2002. So yeah.
The thing as well is that you're doing painting, photography, illustration, design. There's a lot represented here.
Mm-hmm. I think I just really like all of it and doing all of it. So I kind of tend to I'll move from one thing to another. So I'll do some painting, and then in between I'll go out and take photographs, and they're sort of all kind of joined and linked in some ways as well. So I really like colour, and I really like sort of either drawing that, and then when I do my paintings I take small areas of my drawings and turn them into my paintings. When I take photographs I like to seek out quite sort of abstract close-up areas of things, so in a similar way that I do the drawings really. So it's all kind of linked.
I was wondering as well, like when you do your painting, your illustration, how do you work? Do you like just sit at a table, or do you go sit in the park? Because there's like loads of Sefton Park as well.
Well, some of those ones I did the drawings for those paintings when I was actually in the park. So I took a sketchbook, but it was quite small. And then what I do with these types of paintings is I take small areas of the drawing and I blow them up, and I redraw like almost freehand onto the canvas. I use that as a starting point, say the drawing that I've done in ink and watercolour or ink and acrylics, and then make something like that but on the canvas. And use that as a starting point for it. So the paintings weren't made in the park, but the drawings that I did for them were. So yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
The other illustrations, I will literally like go around the house and like there'll be things around. I'll go, oh, I want to draw that, so I'll and then if anyone's like in, I'm like, you can't move any of that stuff on the table. Like, please don't move any of that until I finish, because obviously I do the ink first, and then that's got to dry, and then when that's dry, then I can put the other paint on or the watercolour on. So yeah.
And you're using all sorts of charcoal, or I don't know, what kind of material do you prefer?
For the illustrations I use Indian ink, and I use usually acrylic or watercolour paints. I started using the acrylics because I ran out of watercolours when I was doing and then I've actually thought, oh, that's quite nice, I quite like it with the acrylics. So, and the ones on the canvas, the illustrations on the canvas, they're using acrylics, so because it lasts and but I like charcoal as well. That's really nice needing to work in like with things like life drawing or still life type things. When I paint on canvas I prefer oil paint, but it takes a long time to dry, and I don't have a studio that's not at home at the moment, so obviously the smell of oil paints and turps and stuff is like so acrylics is what I use at the moment, but there's a really nice like finish to oil paints and stuff, and I quite like using paint quite thick and textured as well. I haven't got any of those types in this show. Okay. But yeah,
next time.
Yeah.
What would you say is your inspiration then?
I'm inspired by lots of different people, lots of artists. including people like, I mean, in terms of illustrations, I like Quentin Blake and things like that. I like a painter called Patrick Heron. I like all the kitchen sink school artists, so like John Bratby and stuff like that. And they were all, they do quite thick paintings, but also very, like, they're very realistic. So things like somebody's kitchen sink or something like that. So I kind of like when I do my drawings that are ink and watercolour, it's a similar type of thing in that sense. Who else? Paula Rego is another inspiration, I think. So yeah, I interviewed her when I was doing my A-levels when I was about 18. So I went to her studio down in London and met her and asked her loads of questions, and so that was cool. Yeah.
And I mean, in terms of like imagination, what you're drawing, what you're painting, obviously you're inspired by your life, I guess, because
Yeah.
I'm seeing the illustration with the little sentences. This is something that everyone of our age can relate to.
Yeah.
It's really clever. It's very witty as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, they're kind of like, I call them like semi-autobiographical, basically, because they're based on things that have kind of happened to me or I've seen that have happened, and I've kind of gone, right, oh yeah, that'll make a... I did those kind of just for myself when I did them. I wasn't sure how they were going to come out, and I nearly didn't show anyone them as well, and then I showed them to one friend and she was like, oh yeah, they're great, you should like... So then I put them out online, and then they got quite a good response, and I used them for a couple of solo shows that I had 2 years ago. So, and then there's some left, and I've made some new stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, because they talk about men, about work, about just society in general, about how, I don't know, we are getting drunk in the weekend, and then it's...
No, it's based on like everyday life, and like, yeah, or you run out of food and all you've got is a packet of Angel Delight in the cupboard, or dating or whatever. Yeah.
Are you inspired by your friends, by your family, or is it just you? I don't know.
No. Yeah, I'm inspired by like everyone. So there's there's some that I've done and I've included people in them, and it's like and then I've like ended up giving them to people, or the sketches for them. There was one. It's there actually, yeah. It's that one there about cheese toasties, and it was me and my flatmate, and her boyfriend came in. He'd been singing at a gig, and we'd both been out for a couple of drinks, and then we came home and we decided to make toasties. So I did that, and then she was like, "No one's going to come for dinner if you put that up on anywhere." So, but yeah.
Well, that's something that everyone can relate to. I think a lot of people have done that.
Yeah.
What would you say is the message behind your work?
I don't know. I think I like to sort of make people look at things a bit differently, maybe. With the illustrations, it's kind of highlighting what's funny about things and try and be, but also make people think a little bit as well. What I want to do with those is maybe do some socio-political kind of things, almost like, you know, like Spitting Image, the way that was. Have you heard of it? No? Okay, it's fine. It was like a comedy that was around in the 80s, and it basically satire about especially about like the government and stuff like that, and about all the different politicians and stuff. So it would be interesting to kind of like, what I'd like to do with those illustrations is take it down that route, but I need to come up with ideas for that and research it a little bit. So, but yeah.
No, I saw it. There's one of the illustration. It's Twatcher.
Yeah. Yeah, so that type of thing. So, because like in Spitting Image, like say there was John Major, but he was always really grey and stuff like that. And he was always really like miserable and stuff like that. And like obviously Thatcher, she's just awful. But they really like they did it really well. So that's kind of an inspiration, but also like but do it in the to actually take the mickey out of everybody, but in using the illustrations and captions and stuff like that. So I need to sort of develop that if I can do. It's an idea.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that you've been doing art for a little while now. Mm-hmm. You've had plenty of projects. You've had some awards as well.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I got the Welsh Assembly's Award for Fine Art back in 2002 when I finished my degree. Jenny Randerson chose my painting and put it in her office. She was the Minister for Culture for Wales at the time, so yeah.
And you have plenty of projects. You're freelance as well. You're doing photography. I've seen like wedding photography as well, and design.
I do weddings, I do events, I do, I kind of try and do whatever I can as well now, so not spread myself too thin, and concentrate fully on a project at a time, each project at a time, sorry. And so, yeah, I do all sorts of photography. And I try and sell my paintings, I try and sell my drawings, and I do gigs and play music and stuff as well. So.
Yeah, you play music as well, you have a band.
I do have a band, called Moxie. And I also do solo gigs. I sing with Sense of Sound singers, and I also sing with Science of the Lamps. I do backing vocals for them. So
a full artist.
Yeah. Well, I really want to record an album. I've got loads of songs that are ready to go, so I just need to actually get into a recording studio and make that even. And that's something I've been saying I'm going to do for ages, and I've sort of ended up concentrating on more of the painting and photography, and like I said, I sort of concentrate on one thing at a time, so I think now's the time to do something with that. But obviously it's going to cost money to get into a recording studio, and that takes time as well, and getting everybody together and stuff. So
what are your future projects? What are you working on? Because you are also part of the Threshold Festival.
I am, yes. I have been with them since the beginning. I'm involved with organising the arts with them, so that will be coming up next year, but we'll probably start organising that sooner rather than later.
So is it a call for artists as well here?
There will be a call for artists, yeah. There's always a call for artists. And usually the deadlines are, 1st of December for any entries, but obviously the entry forms will be coming out soon for that. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jessamine. Jessamine's exhibition is on display at the Egg Café until the 20th of September. Next on Arts Alive, we'll meet Alison Kinnaird, the famous Scottish artist, who will talk to us about her solo exhibition. Welcome back to Arts Alive. For this second part of the show, we're going to go and meet with Alison Kinnaird, one of the world's most famous glass engravers and musician as well, for her solo show on display here at the Bluecoat Display Centre.
My artistic career got off to a good start when I was turned down for art college. So I've never been to art college. And I went to university instead and did Celtic studies and archaeology. And although I thought it wasn't very useful at the time, I think it comes into my work quite a lot. So I got into glass engraving just by accident. I was on holiday in the north of Scotland, a town called Forres. And on a wet day, my family went to visit the studio of a glass engraver. There had been a picture of him in a local paper. And I saw the work he'd been doing, and I thought it was fantastic. And he saw some drawings that I'd been doing during my holidays, and he said, I think these would work well in glass, so why don't you come and work with me during the summer? So that's how I started glass engraving, and I've been hooked on it ever since. I've been engraving for more than 40 years. And it's a very rare art these days. It's quite a dying art actually, because it's a very slow process. And although a lot of the glass companies used to have roomfuls of engravers, putting vine leaves onto drinking glasses, it's not looked on as being commercial anymore. So it's the artist's studio that's keeping it alive. Glass is a fascinating medium. It's really special compared with all the other media, because you can make it look like any of the others for a start. You can make it look like stone or metal or ceramics or textiles even. It's really exciting. And then of course it really comes alive when you start putting light into it. And that's what I've been doing over the past few years, combining this very old craft of engraving, copper wheel engraving in fact, with LED lighting, which is a new technology, and they go together so well. Most of my work has to do with human relationships in one way or another. I mean, most of my work contains the human figure, and I like to see the glass working as a window or a door or a mirror. It's got all those qualities in it, so you can use that in the way you treat the subject, so that you're actually looking into, you're looking into the glass, and you're seeing through the figure as well, in a metaphorical way as well as in a practical way. I feel that the figures are kind of trapped in the glass in a way because, you know, it's a bit like ice as well. It's got that quality in it, and they're kind of frozen in a moment when you engrave them. So there is that moment where they're kind of stopped quite suddenly. I don't think there's really a message in it because each piece is kind of different. It's just I'm trying to put over a feeling or an emotion or something that I'm thinking at the time. And so each one is different. But I'm also using the symbolism as well. So, you know, these are doorways, and doorways have always been very symbolic in the past. You know, they had at Stonehenge, for instance, the trilithons were placed so that they had the sun coming through them. They were actually a calendar in many ways, and they were very symbolic in their way. But doorways also are very symbolic from a human point of view because we're all coming and going all the time, and nobody stands quite still. And I like doorways because you're there but you're not there, and the glass is kind of like that as well. You know, it's a material that's there but it's invisible as well.
How is Scotland having an influence onto you?
Well, I think in some ways it's the colours that I use and the shapes that I use. I mean, they're quite plain, quite sort of refined in a way. I don't tend to use very bright colours most of the time, and the subjects that I use quite often involve things from the past as well. I mean, these doorways, for instance, that I'm standing in front of, they relate to the tombs, you know, the very ancient tombs that you find in the north of Scotland. In fact, the stone that these are cut out of came from Caithness, which is in the very north of Scotland, and there are many tombs around in that area which use that's actual stone in the past.
How do you work exactly? Do you have a studio? Do you go outside?
I have a studio in our house. We actually live in a converted church, so it's a big house, but we use up every bit of space. And I have a studio on the landing at the top of the stairs because you don't need much space for actual engraving. Wheel engraving is done with a small lathe that turns spindles with copper wheels on the end. And you have about 40 or 50 of these wheels, and each one makes a different cut on the glass. So you're actually moving the glass against the wheel instead of drawing like a pencil. It's sort of like moving the paper against your pencil, you know, it's the opposite way around. So it's quite a difficult craft technique to get in control of, but it's lasted for well over 2,000 years. So if a technique has lasted that long, it must have something special about it.
But what happens if you're like, I mean, I'm thinking when you draw, you can erase after that, but what happens if you do like a small mistake? It can happen, or like something moves and you don't have the right pattern that you wanted?
Well, with glass engraving, you can't rub out, so you don't make mistakes when it's really important. You do get quite good at, you know, the odd thing. If you make a tiny slip, you get quite good at sort of using that. I mean, sometimes it's okay if you're doing a tree, you put in another couple of leaves, you know. But if you're having to draw a single line down a very important piece of glass, because some of them are very expensive glass to start off with, then you just do your deep breathing exercises beforehand, and you approach it with a lot of confidence. And confidence is really the key, because if you know what you're doing, if you've practiced it enough, you know you're going to get it right first time. But it is difficult. Yeah.
I've read as well that you've been teaching the College of Art in Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And you
turned me down in the first place.
Who turned you down?
Yes.
Right, and you've been teaching for them after that. But you were saying that it's a dying art, the fact of engraving the glass. How do you see it in the future?
Well, I think it will keep going, but just in a small way. I mean, part of the problem is that it is quite slow, and so, you know, a lot of the students who come to art college, they prefer to go to something that has a quicker result. You know, the the hot shop where they blow glass gets very quick results, and they're quite spectacular, and there's a lot of drama and action going on. With engraving, you sit there for a long time in the same position, doing the same sort of thing for hours on end. But the results, I think, are absolutely spectacular as well, so it's well worth the extra trouble. And it does suit some people, but you have to have a kind of, I don't know, meditative attitude to it as well. You know, it's not going to happen in a hurry. So you have to be patient and enjoy the process as well.
That's all this week on Arts Alive. See you next time.